call a nightmare. So basically, this game is very focused on having smooth acrobatic movements, and we make use of that. There's also a boost function that we take advantage of. And there's these hidden icons that you can collect that do various things. The one we get maxes out your dash meter, so that we can just continue going fast for the rest of the level. And so in this particular section, there's exactly 20 orbs for this lap, so we can't miss a single one. Ooh. Sometimes you can get a little bad on positioning and be a little too high or a little too low. And then there's these rings that you can go through that increase your boost meter. The orange ones increase your boost meter by 1 second, and the yellow ones increase it by 2 seconds. So ideally you want to go through them as much as you can, especially on stages where we don't get the refill. And then after we do all 4 laps, we'll be facing a boss that's unique for every stage. In the all levels category, we do 7 total stages. There's a total of 8 in the game, but the last stage is the same for both characters. There's 2 characters, Elliot and Claris, each have their own unique set of stages, and they each have a unique ending as well. So here we'll be going opposite or the same direction as the boss is going, and we're going to do a parry loop around its tail to kill it in 1 hit. Usually I can get it first try, but sometimes you can get unlucky. Normally it takes about 20 hits to kill, and what you'll do is you'll hit its face, grab onto it, and attack it. But you can parry loop various body parts and also deal damage that way. If you hit the tail, you do all hits of damage in a single hit. And that's basically the fastest way to do it. There's a way that's slightly faster, but it's a lot more riskier to do. And it's kind of tricky. So this is just the way I do it, since it's consistent for the most part. And after each stage, you go back to the title screen, and then you select the next stage. And technically there's no real order, but just go with this order, with like the default order, since it's the fastest for menu select. And so we do 3 levels as Claris, and then we do all of Elliot's levels, and then we do the final stage, which is shared between the characters, but depending on the character you complete them as, you get a different ending. But both characters function exactly the same. And in each stage you start out as the character, and we'll get into that in the next stage when it becomes more prominent what you can do with that character. And so for this stage, there's no boost meter, so we need to go through as many of those rings as we can. And instead of going to the right, we're going to go to the left, since it's slightly faster to get back to the starting point to start the next lap. For this section, there's also exactly 20 orbs. It's not very common that it's like that, but it happens often enough that you need to pay attention. And then sometimes there's also orbs that are hidden, but there's usually markers that indicate that they're there. Like there are those stars, which just basically act as like extra points you can collect. There's also these boosters that you can go to for a little extra speed without wasting your dash meter. And then here for the third one, we're gonna go backwards since it's faster, and you can collect all 20 orbs beforehand. Let's see, nope, here we go. And then there's these colored rings that are multicolored. You can go through those, and basically you'll enter an acrobatic phase where you can do various tricks, parry loops and stuff with triggers to build up bonus points. And that's basically very, very heavily used in the score attack. And then there's also like little enemies around that can hinder you sometimes, but for the most part they're pretty non-consequential. But a lot of people who play this the first time, they usually don't know what to do because the game doesn't really give you an idea of it. But once you understand the game a little bit, it's pretty simple. Basically, if you want to go for max score, you basically act as a speed run and try to clear the cage as quickly as possible, because after you do that, you get bonus points on everything afterwards until you go back to the start. So, but if you skip the start, you can keep going around and around, and things refresh, and you can accrue a lot of points to get higher ranks. The only reason for the ranking in the speed run is that you need a minimum C rank average on every stage to unlock the final stage for that character. So now we're in this next boss, Gulpo. Basically, if you hit him while he's stunned, you do double damage to him. There's a way to kill him in 3 hits, but it's a very precise timing, and I don't get very often. So I basically do this other way that kills him slightly slower, but still fairly speedily. But basically, I know this went really quickly, but you hit these fish boosters, you go through the entire cylinder, and if you hit him on the way, you'll damage him. And if you hit him while he's stunned, you do extra damage to him, and you can kill him as quickly as 3 hits. But you have to be on perfect timing on your first hit, and your second hit as well. Because then he'll fall in a certain way to where you can just hit him right away, instead of waiting for him to regain consciousness. And so there's a little bit of a faster way to get back to the start screen by doing a soft reset after every stage, but the timing is very precise and I haven't been able to get it in a while, so I don't really attempt it in runs anymore, because if you do it improperly, you get a hard reset where it goes back to the start of the console instead of back to the start screen. And it's like about 30 seconds of time loss that I don't really like gambling for. Alright, so now this is the first stage where we do the first lap on foot. Basically, you can move around as character, and jumping's faster, and you can chain jumps for even more speed. And there's unique ways you can chain jumps. Basically, you can do a jump and a double jump, and if you time your double jumps just right, you'll gain a large boost in speed that scales infinitely. So as long as you have a horizontal position to go, you'll keep going faster and faster. There we go. So you can do that without you can actually kill the first Marin without having to actually change into knights. So now for this section, we want to avoid hitting the walls because they just like wreck your momentum. There we go. And that's not terrible at all. So you can use paraloops to gather orbs that you normally can't reach, or gather clusters of orbs. So we're going to actually use that to our advantage on the next one to skip an auto-scroller. So first we'll go to the left. There's a total of 13 orbs we can grab. There we go. And then we're going to go all the way past the cage here and grab 5 more orbs. And then right after this section is an auto-scroller that's fairly lengthy, but here we're going to do a little trick called like a super paraloop, where we can get orbs that aren't on the screen but are on the level itself. And so we get an extra 2 orbs there, and that saves us about 30-40 seconds from having to do the auto-scroller. And you can be fairly quick on that, but sometimes you can get unlucky. It's not an easy or consistent trick to do. And here, just collect some more orbs. And there's some hidden orbs there that we get. It's not exactly obvious that they're there. And then there's a little lion creature there that can shock you if it's doing its little Blanca attack. So now we're going into the next boss, which generally gives a lot of new players trouble. His name is Jackal. He's kind of like Rayman in style, except without a body either. He'll throw cards at you, and basically what you gotta do is avoid the cards and hit him once to knock off his cape, and then that's the only way he can take damage is when he doesn't have his cape. And the optimal way to hit him, or to kill him, is just to hit him up and down. Let's see. Okay, good. And then basically move whatever way is closest to his cape. And as long as he doesn't have his cape, you can damage him. If he does have his cape, he'll throw cards at you and cause a lot of trouble. And that's basically the fight that gives people the most trouble in this game, from what I've seen, for people who are just playing for the first time or that kind of thing. But Claris's levels are generally easier, and now we're going to move on to the more difficult levels with Elliot, which will be doing more of the on-foot stuff. Which we'll actually be taking advantage of the movement speed you get from multi-jumping on the next stage. So you'll see how fast we can really go if I can time it properly. The window for gaining a boost of speed on the jump is very tight, but if you do it right, you can gain some serious momentum and really speed yourself up. But you also don't get a whole lot of control. There we go. So basically when you get hit there, it takes away all those orbs you get, which basically represent the human heart, I guess. I don't really understand it because it's kind of a convoluted story. Let's see, there we go. So we just collect all the orbs over here. They're all conveniently in this corner right next to the cage. And now we can jump, 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 jump. Oh, I failed that. So basically that's a little tricky there because the ground like gets really distorted. So now we're just gonna go through business as usual. We want to avoid that booster up there. It's because it'll just put you round in a circle as long as you hit it. And we're gonna hit these rings here just so that we get more boost for the rest of the stage, because we're gonna be taking a route that doesn't go past where the boost icon is. So we're gonna go down here and go up, around, and through these, and to get 20 orbs. And sometimes it can be a little tricky because it's all about your aiming. And if we were to go right, we'd be hitting an overhead section similar to what we saw in the second stage of the game. And instead of going that way, we're just going back this way because it's a lot faster, but it also skips the boost. So now we're going to do another super para loop here. We want to get 10 orbs, which is exactly what we got. And we're going to skip another auto-scroller here where you basically go like in an underwater kind of mermaid thing. And it's a really neat segment. I really like it, but it's just really slow to go through. So we just get all those orbs, and now we come back here, and now we're going to the next boss, Puffy, which is an interesting boss. Basically, it doesn't actually have any attacks, but it just bounces around, and our goal is to hit it through these walls, and there's several of them, and they get progressively more difficult to hit through. But sometimes this fight can be a little trolly depending on where she bounces. And sometimes, and that's like the only way she can hit you, if she hits you while she's being thrown. There we go. So not the fastest, but pretty decent. And then, ooh, that's interesting. Okay, and then she'll basically get popped on that wall because she's a balloon or something like that, like one of those bouncy balls you can sit on. I don't remember. I don't know if they ever had a name for those. And one of the easier fights casually, I would say, but for a speed run, it's hard to do it consistently sometimes. But this was basically, I would say this is like during like a golden period with Sonic Team. They were coming out with games that were very original and fun to play. Like they came out with Ristar near the end of the Genesis life cycle, and this, and Burning Rangers, which I'll be running tomorrow for this marathon as well, which is another Sonic Team game. And then they moved on to the Dreamcast after that, which also produced some good games there. So this is the last stage where we'll be doing the first lap on foot, but for this one we're only doing it halfway on foot. So there's like 13 orbs down here we can get. We technically only need 12 of them, but you just kind of get 13 anyways. Then we'll just go back here, change the nights. So if we didn't get those orbs, we'd have to go around like 3 times if I recall, because there's just not enough orbs. And this is the only stage where we intentionally take an auto-scroller just because there's no other way to get orbs quickly. And we'll be seeing that near the end of the stage. So there's also exactly 20 orbs here before the cage. And we're going to hit that booster, and take us right into the cage. It gives the extra boost of speed as well. And then for this next one, there's plenty of orbs, but we're going to take a specific way to try to minimize how many we get. I mean, it doesn't really slow you down, but ooh, I missed a short one. There we go. And then there's a nice little cage down here, which will give us another 8. And then here's that, and there's also a boost refill there, so we're going to grab that on the way back. Or miss it, that works too. And now we're going to do the only auto-scroller of the game that we actually participate in. And let's see, there's 2 orbs here that we're going to grab. And then we can get up to 20 or more total through here, but it all depends on your movement. So total of 7 so far. But luckily, even if we're short, we can get orbs afterwards. There's those extra 2 that you can get when they come back. 18, perfect. And there's in the orbs, there's orbs right there that you can do a large para loop to get if you're short. And then instead of going through the auto-scroller again, we'll just go back the way we came. And bam, we'll go to the next boss, Claws. This is probably my favorite boss in the game to fight just because of how different it is. Basically, the boss only has 1 hit point, but you have to take out these cats, or these mice that it lights up. So normally you can only hit the mice by charging into them, and you can only do that when they're lit. But the unlit ones, you can do para loops around and take them out as well. And so we take advantage of that fact by doing that to take care of the boss more quickly, so that we don't have to wait for it to jump from mouse to mouse. And see, just like that, it's dead. And sometimes you can kill it a little bit more quickly if you get lucky, but for the most part, that's almost as fast as you can do it. And then we'll enter the last regular stage, Stick Canyon. That stage is probably the most difficult stage in the game casually, and it's a very difficult stage in a speed run as well. And we'll get into that as we get into it. Basically, there's 3 auto-scrollers, and they're all 100% skippable, but they're very lengthy auto-scrollers. Like, the first one's about 40 seconds, I think, and the second one is about 80 seconds. So, obviously, we want to skip them. But the first auto-scroller can be semi-tricky to avoid, but we can do our best. So here I'm going to attempt a trick called the cactus jump, where we jump onto the cactus and it'll let us move while this cutscene is playing. And it'll give us this funny little animation until we change our animations. And basically it's just like a little trick. I believe there's other stages you can do it, but not to the same effect. And then here we get the boost icon really early. This is the only stage where we actually get 2 boost icons. But there's like a total of 3 throughout the stage, if I recall, maybe more. But it's a very lengthy stage by itself. Alright, so now here we're going to skip the first auto-scroller. There's exactly 20 orbs before it, so we're going to use that to our advantage. Oop, missed an orb. Okay, so a little bit slow. That's fine. I'd rather be slow than reckless. And if we hit that grate there, we'll be flung into a 40-second auto-scroller. So instead of that, we're just going to kill it and go back to the left and go back to the start to skip that auto-scroller from happening. And now here, we're going to go to the third one. We're going to like try to be at, there we go, at a good height. And we're going to hit that switch there. There we go. And now we're just going to collect some orbs. We're going to hit this magnet section. Basically, it'll be tallied up on some bonus points afterwards. They don't end up no matter how many points you have, it doesn't really matter. Because it's always times out the same no matter what. You can kill that. And then if we needed to, there is another boost icon here, but there's another one that we'll be grabbing later that will adequately refill us. But, well, there's these monsters in the game called Cuddles that can be really annoying and get in your way, like that. If you go through that triangle part of it, it'll drain your boost gauge completely, and that's really bad. So now we're entering this section. This is probably the most difficult part of the speedrun. Basically, we got to climb up this tower, and then we got to climb back down it afterwards to skip 2 auto-scrollers. And we'll be at the same exact camera angle as well, so we don't get to see where we're going, we just have to know. There we go. And now we get to go back down it. And there's like a nice pattern you can do to get down just right. Oop. Although there's boosters that will hit you up. So, interesting thing about the game I learned recently, as you're going down, you gain acceleration. So as long as you're going down, you move faster and faster to an infinite amount of speed. And it actually helps for going down that much more quickly. And it's apparently something that was removed in the HD ports of NiGHTS for probably just something that was overlooked. And now we're fighting our counterpart in this weird story, Riala. And basically, in Riala, it's just a duel, which we just have to do a paraloop around him 3 times. There we go. And so far, so good. Sometimes he can be a bit trolly in his movement. Awesome. That was a near perfect fight. Sometimes he can be very trolly in his movement and not dash at you right away, which isn't detrimental to the run, but it does affect my timing on when to hit him, to the point to where sometimes I have trouble recovering. Alright, now we're going to go to the final stage of the game, Twin Seeds. Basically, it's a unique stage in that you have 180 seconds to complete it, regardless of how many of the cages you destroy. So we still have to destroy 4 cages, but we have a total of 180 seconds instead of 120 seconds per cage. And so for like a lot of people who originally played this game on the Saturn, they may have not accessed this stage on their first playthrough because you need a C rank on every stage in order to access them. I know for me, for sure, that's how it was. So first we fly off to the thing. Basically, NiGHTS is trapped in a cage, so we play as ourselves. And the difference when you're playing as one of the kids in the flying form is that you can't do paraloops. But you gain a larger attract radius for orbs. So because of that, there's no icons or anything that we can collect. But ideally, we want to go through as many yellow. What's the word I'm looking for? Rings as possible to keep our boost meter up so that we can do Wise Man quickly. So there I collect some just so that I get a bunch of boost because yellow rings give you a lot more boost. Oop, that was a little too high. So spiked rings, you hit them, you lose 5 seconds, you get slightly stunned. It won't affect us for this because we're pretty speedy. So here we're going to go through as many orange rings as we can, even though they don't increase the boost nearly as much. It's all about just keeping our momentum going. So now here we're going to do a little bit of a turnaround to skip having to go over through the entire lap. So there I press both the triggers at the same time and execute something called an air brake. It's not 100% consistent that you can do that, but when you can, it's very, very satisfying. And so by doing that, we can skip going through the entire lap, which is fairly lengthy. And then we're going to do it once more here for the same reason, and see if you don't time it just right, then you just kind of fly in a random direction. And the nice thing about this, there's exactly 20 orbs there that we can grab. Sometimes there's more if you hit it for whatever reason. And so now that we have all the pieces of, I guess, the ideas of a human heart, like courage, wisdom, and that kind of thing. And so now we're able to free NiGHTS, and now we get treated to a little cutscene where we're going to fight the final boss, Wise Man. This boss has 4 phases, but once in a while the game will glitch and you won't see all 4 phases. It'll repeat another phase. But hopefully we'll go through all 4 phases so I can explain them. In the first phase, they'll be shooting fireballs at us, and he'll be shooting 2 at a time, and he always shoots them in a similar fashion. From what I understand, each character is slightly different in like the timing he fires them, but other than that, there's nothing different about them. And then we just go under a little bit just to get them to change slightly faster, maybe like frames difference, and now we're in an asteroid field. And we're just gonna get as close as we can. Ah, whoa. Got chained there. So in order to damage Wiseman, both the knights have to be touching his shield, otherwise you'll just bounce off if you let go. So now entering a snowfield. Oh, ooh, I was so close to avoiding them all. And you'll know when the other knights is connected when you see like a rainbow kind of flash. And the final phase, basically we have to dash through the middle of the tornado. Even if you don't have any boost gauge, if you press the dash button as you're about to pass through it, you'll pass through it just fine. Time is coming up soon, so sorry about that. I'll let you know basically when the screen fades to white, and I'll call time when it is. Alright, and time. And so this is Nights in the Dreams for the Sega Saturn. It's a wonderful game. I highly recommend playing, even on the PC port, which I feel isn't as true to the original. I still think it's an excellent game to play regardless of that. There's a lot of deep mechanics going on. If you want to just do score attacks, the speedrun is also excellent. I have guides written on speedrun.com. I'm always happy to have new runners. 25-24, that's great. My PB is like a high 24, so that's an excellent time. I'm very happy with that. Thank you very much for having me speed stuff for charity, and I wish you guys the best of luck in raising money for Doctors Without Borders, and I'll be back tomorrow with Burning Rangers. So have a great night, and thank you so much, and good luck on the rest of the marathon.